the way through that.
Good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors work session for ARPA fundings. Today is January 18, 2022. First on the agenda is updates from previous meetings, review of the final rules. Oh, that's kind of a loaded agenda item, isn't it?
Page by page.
Yes, let's do that. Nobody else had any plans for the next 5 years, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I can say that Lisa and excuse me, I got some talking throat. Oh, excuse me, it's like all of a sudden the dust thing from my mask, but my throat. We had our ARPA meeting with ISAC. And it really just basically went over just the generalities, actually what was in the kind of the basic summary. They kind of just went over each of those particular areas. I then did ask some specific questions, which they said they would get back to me on, in regards to, I have 5 questions, but mainly in regards to capital expenditures and seeking some clarity, because it did state in those pages 194 to like 206 that when you're looking at capital expenditures, you have to look at the total cost. So I wasn't clear if it was just the total cost of utilization of ARPA dollars or the total project cost. So we've gotten some conflicting information. The first response was, no, we think it's ARPA dollars. Then I was talking with Lisa, also thought it was, no, they meant the whole project. And if it's the whole project, then there was some additional information that was going to be required for those. They have,
Yeah, it says if a project has a total expected capital expenditure of less than $1 million, no written justification.
right.
Additional. Greater than $1 million, but less than 10 million, written justification. Different rule.
Center
It says total expected project cost, and to me,
Yeah.
that means the total cost, not just the ARPA request.
Right. Pages. What page are you on? It's 191.
101.
Yeah. 201. Okay, thank you.
And my understanding of why they were doing that was so that you could look at it from a cost benefit perspective to see if there was a lower cost solution.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. That was a question I did ask for specific clarity on. Was and I would concur with Lisa. I took it as it was the total construction cost, not just what they're asking for, but the total. But it was unclear because I'm assuming that some people, I mean, some projects may be utilizing only, I don't know. So I have not heard back on that particular one. I also asked specifically if it related to housing, because housing is referenced as a specific use throughout here. And if they had to meet that additional information for housing projects as well. And that's what I was not thinking you probably do, but it seemed like housing is listed in these more clearly defined, both in the interim and the final rule compared to anything else. And that was just unclear. We had to also do the written justification for housing because they said they could already be identified as a impacted group.
It didn't say throughout there anything that was capital. You had to go to the.
Then you had a reference here. So it's just kind of, you read one thing and think, okay, I got this. And then it would say reference here, but then you read the next thing and it was confusing. And so that's why I have inquired those questions. We just had our meeting on Thursday. So it's been 4 days, 4 work days. So I don't have the response back on that. I'd have that relatively soon. And that was the basic. I think I was the only one that really had the questions.
Yeah, you asked all the questions.
I have other questions, so I want to clarity on this. I think others from our meetings that had just been out for a week just really hadn't had the time to read it. I just kind of
Yeah,
dove
most
in.
of, yeah, there's a
I dove in
lot
and
of,
read it right away and came up with
there
some initial questions that were specific to our applications.
are very few entities, it looks to me like that have even started trying to determine what they're gonna do with their dollars. I'm gathering from listening to those meetings that there's just hardly anybody that's,
And it's except for the larger,
yes, with the exception of the larger, but
the ones that were getting the larger amounts, well, I'd say some of the smaller counties that got a smaller allotment were not doing any type of granting. They were keeping it all in-house and, but I do know of several counties, Johnson, Lynn, Dubuque, Scott, us, Dallas, I can't remember, there was a couple, I think, up north that were doing grant applications well, and some have already hired a grant manager and moved on. But yes, obviously, there's still quite a few that,
Right.
we don't know what they are.
So we've got 400 and some pages of rule. My review, it seems like there's a lot of pages that don't apply to us because they aren't necessarily dealing with our projects. We don't have any projects in those categories. So that's why I thought, how are we gonna get up? I found this memorandum dated January 6th, which is the list of what we did before the final rule came out. Did you get a copy of this?
You have a copy of
I
that?
did it too. I'm so sorry. I put it on top of your phone.
Oh, it's right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was gonna suggest a couple of things, unless you.
Go right ahead.
Okay, first, I know Sandra's got 3 emails that we might need to make decisions on in terms of give her some direction. And then I thought maybe we could go through this January 6th memo of what we've already done and see now that we've had a chance to read the final rule. If we're, where we are on these, if we found anything that says, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that, or yeah, we're really sure of that. And then look back at the other applications and see what we need from them. Okay.
What emails are you talking about?
From
Previous emails?
There were emails from Ziering,
Okay.
Collins, and Home Allies, Inc. that I forwarded to the board and ARPA.
Okay.
ARPA group.
Just wanted to make sure I knew which.
Mhm.
emails you were talking about. Make sure I had this.
Summarize and give us your recommendation.
Let's see, the first one. Ziering, we were basically asking some follow-up questions. And just in general, we were asking a few questions to determine if they wanted to pull their application because letting them know that the board was aware of their additional or their urgent concern that they were bringing up. That they said was basically more important than their application. So we just needed clarification on whether or not they wanted to pull it. They said no. We would like to keep our original application. And they were also asked if they would like the board to consider funding part or all of the original requests. They said yes. We would like the board to consider any amount of funding that would be possible for our original request. So that's Ziering. There was an email in Collins. And it looked like they were just providing some additional information that you could use to make your decision. And so my response was that, thanks for the feedback. The Treasury recently released the final rules for ARPA. The board is still in the process of determining if any of its original considerations are impacted by this recent release. Therefore, no final decisions are available at this time. So you're still in the process of reviewing. We received a request from Home Allies Inc. The original application is for the amount of $68,200. This email indicated they would like to increase the pending grant award to $250,000, and no response has been made at this time.
We want to increase it from 68,200 to 250,000.
From they want to increase it from 68,200 to 250,000.
Okay.
We have not responded. However, when there have been requests to change the original application, we have been advising applicants that the board is going to act on their original application, and we're not accepting any changes at this time.
Well, that's
So
what
that's
they
the
already
information
told
that's been
Zero.
provided. Correct.
So I think we need to be consistent and tell Home Allies the same thing, that maybe something will happen later, you know. Maybe, but no, we're not reopening applications, so we're not allowing.
I think if you reopen applications, you have to reopen every single one.
Exactly.
Even the ones that we deem ineligible, we'd have to reopen those as well. They have the same opportunity.
So I think the answer is probably no. However, if anything changes in terms of the second round, we would notify Home Allies, and they would have an opportunity to submit a supplemental application. If we decided to go that route. Not guaranteeing that we can.
I would concur with that.
Yeah.
I think in regards to zeroing, wasn't our discussion on whether we wanted to look at their total project or just the engineering portion?
It was the engineering, because they had so much, and then all of a sudden they were coming out with yet another thing, and we thought that a full study would help them direction.
Right. And they did have engineering as they identified a couple items, and engineering being one of their items in their application.
Right, and what were they at 50,000? Is that what they
No,
were
I
asking?
had engineering on here, because zeroing is 134,000.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sure you're right.
I mean, I've got the application just pulled up.
Number was zeroing. Yeah, too much stuff.
Here, I can tell you, it is 24.
Yeah, 134.
347.
Yeah.
Yes, 330 is lined out in this engineering. So.
Was there a third one there, Sandra? So it was zeroing.
Zeroing Collins.
Oh, Collins, right.
And Home Allies.
I think Collins' emails were more advocating for their
They wanted to add, it looks like they were providing additional information.
additional information. It was,
Yeah.
right. right, on their project.
But not asking for more money, just additional justice.
It looked like it was additional information, but I wanted to give the generic answer that would be consistent, just in case there was something in there that would lead the board in one direction or the other.
Yeah, I didn't,
It's
because it was, the application was already in, I didn't really read it.
No, I think what they were doing, additional information they were providing us was, in case we were trying to prioritize,
Oh,
right, asking that we still consider, part of that, of one project if we're having to make some hard decisions. Right. That. Do you want, I have it here.
thank you.
So, you want to just go through the list?
That's what I thought might make sense.
Want to start with, did you want to go over internal projects again? Or do you want us to just start with the external and just stick with that?
Do we have it that we can put it up on the screen as well?
Which one do you want? Do you want the spreadsheet or do you want the memo that was?
Well, there are some not on the list. Is this list that you're talking about with the 3 categories? Is there-
That does not include a couple of us. Sandra was saying that you had just not decided either way.
Right,
Right.
right.
What does an include? I'm not understanding.
The city of Searing for one,
Okay.
because you're not yet decided on that.
Where's the one that had the 3 columns?
I can pull that one.
Okay, yeah, let's look at that one, because that one had the original ask, what we discussed in our last meeting for trying to, thinking about funding for, and then it still had those placeholders for the others that we hadn't decided on.
Sorry, do you want me to close these and hide these or?
No, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Which one did you want?
This is the spreadsheet I was talking about.
I didn't know where you want me to go.
Oh.
If that was okay.
So
So
these
these-
are all the wastewater.
Yeah,
So
these are all the external projects.
the question is, did we see anything in final rules that would rule any of these out? And I don't think I did. The one thing that's worth mentioning, I think, I'll just mention it since we're here, because several of those are over 100,000. It's 263. Contracts above 100,000 for wastewater. Sean, it's under section called strong labor standards in water, sewer, and broadband construction. Furthermore, among other requirements contained in 2 CFR 200, appendix 2, all contracts made by a recipient or a subrecipient in excess of $100,000 with respect to water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure projects that involve employment of mechanics or laborers must include a provision for compliance with certain provisions of the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act. Yes. So so it looks to me like everybody on that list we need to have that in the contract. And I'm not familiar with all of those standards. But I've got that one noted. I'm keeping a list of things I've run across that we need to be in contracts. And I just got that one noted on it, but we're going to need to make sure that people understand that there are certain provisions that they will have to meet. So, thank you.
Yeah, that falls under the, I think wherever I saw some sort of like infrastructure or like wastewater, these type of things, it was under strong labor standards. And
Yeah.
while they recommend, I've read through so many times, or they encourage recipients to use strong labor standards, including project labor agreements and community benefits. They just encourage that.
No, but on 263, it says, right, must include a provision.
Right. I'm just saying it starts with that, how they're encouraging folks to use, strong labor and to identify some of those. You're using local workforce, they recommend that and the high strength training standards, but then you're right, then it goes down to say this must be included as well in the
Yes, that's
in the contract. Yep.
because all of those are going to be over that 100,000.
Right.
So for zeroing, we want to add in 134,300 for engineering. Just for here, rather than coming back, since that was brought up. You want to consider that?
I would consider that, I think they, out of their application, that's kind of the first step in order for them to do the rest of their application. That was a separate request within their application part along with the rest of it. And that makes sense to fund just that portion.
Right. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. Everything Leanne in this spreadsheet is also on January 6th.
No.
No.
Was it yellow? Or is it yellow right now? It was not in the January 6th.
Got it. Thank you.
It's forgot to put it.
So we go on to that second section of your infrastructure.
That one?
Yes, lines 18 and 19. Are those also, did anybody find anything to find a rule there that not?
I do not, it's total is, it's the water line and wastewater infrastructure, so it's not a building a home, it's building.
Yeah, and I can't remember, I don't know that I've got the page for it, but they did talk about that you could have water projects for expanded populations. It wasn't to expand your capacity.
Right.
So I think we're okay with those.
The larger change to the broadband. To make it more flexible. Final rule allows counties to invest in locations without reliable wire lines, 100 megabits down, 20 up.
As long as it's scalable to 100 up.
Yeah.
And did that 125, did that help with the Dover project?
That's what I'm wondering.
I think it's still.
Did we ever hear back from Dover on the speed? Gilbert withdrew, was that one?
No, that's.
No.
No, that was in the Minerva Valley.
Minerva, okay.
I thought that, and that might be a follow-up question with Amelia, and I don't know if she's on at all. But I thought they could meet the criteria.
Well, we weren't sure. I thought you were asking, and I never heard what we got back from them.
They couldn't meet the speed, the 100 up, 100 down speed.
What was their application number?
14.
Oh. Down.
Amelia.
And I don't know, did you see if there was, I didn't see it in the final rule, but I mean, read this to like a million times and you can only absorb so much of these pages. But I know in the interim it referenced that you couldn't compete if there was another sector coming in that was going to put the lines in, and I don't know that that was removed out of here, and I think that was in general, that was here for Gilbert, but that was just another caveat when we were looking at broadband in general.
So at the December 20 meeting, Amelia reported that Gilbert was expecting 50 down and 25 up.
Oh.
And then it didn't meet the threshold.
Yeah.
So even with that change,
They still don't meet
they
it.
still don't meet it.
Yeah, that's what she texted here too. The speeds they want to provide are not high enough to meet the treasury guidance and cannot increase the speeds at this point.
Can't increase the speed, okay.
Thank you.
And we're concerned about Heather Glen.
Right.
So Dover's not eligible. Minerva Valley withdrew. Was Heather Glen or Meadow Glen the one that was late?
Meadow
Meadow.
Glen.
No, so Heather Glen's the one we're still looking at.
Yeah.
And did we determine then that that there's competition there?
I don't think we ever got,
Metronet, I get blank, which I don't think Metronet right now intends on going to application. I'll find an email from Marcus. I did email Amelia just now about Heather Glenn. And she replied, I think we need to do a survey to see,
Oh, that's right. They're gonna do the survey.
to show they qualify, showing broadband speeds are not available. So if the county wants to go through that effort, we could.
thank you.
What was the survey going to show again exactly?
Broadband speeds are not available.
Because they have,
MediaCom right now, right?
right, they have MediaCom. And then the last results that they did on that survey out there was, there were like 5 responses or something. So they had no idea whether what the availability truly was.
The original survey that was done for the broadband study.
Oh, that's right, it's broadband.
Oh,
So we didn't have enough of the population to
Yeah,
respond to
exactly.
get a definitive whether they have
Adequate
the
service or not.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Okay.
And then the question was the non-compete.
Right.
Okay, so let's leave that one yellow for now. Keep going.
Or
That
make
sound
it
okay?
or make it change it to question mark or
Yeah.
yellow we're designating as no,
Oh,
right?
were we?
But the yellow.
No,
No,
And
this-
beside it.
yellow was, yeah, just undecided.
Oh, okay, sorry.
If it's a new, no. If it's a no, it's just,
You got it, okay, gotcha, okay.
maybe I'll just make those red if it's no.
Oh, it's okay.
No, it's fine, it's fine. I misheard what you said before, Leanne, so.
Sorry, my voice is not really strong today.
Okay. So on page 133. Talks about vacant and abandoned properties. Oh, I've got so much highlighting all over this that I keep distracting myself. Oh, what was that?
so this doesn't really apply to Rich Homes projects because the properties they're wanting to buy are not vacant and abandoned.
That was my concern. Yeah.
The one thing I don't know, if it's next or not at all, because this is a section on vacant or abandoned properties. But they have on page 135, again, under that same subset, whether that, you have to think of falling under that, for other instances or, it does say demolition activities that exacerbate the pandemic's impact on housing and severe lack of affordable housing are not eligible use of the fund. So I'm unclear, does that mean, would that apply elsewhere, that if you buy some housing that is already lower cost. And you demolish that to build something else, is that an eligible use? And I don't know.
I mean, I think what they're trying to, I think what the intent was to avoid gentrification projects. But I see what, yeah, I understand what your point is.
Yeah, that I don't know in regards to if that's applicable on other areas.
And it's really under neighborhood subheading. Well, I don't know. They're using an outline format. They're using it pretty freely.
This wasn't the most clearly written layout document.
Because it's got A, neighborhood features that promote improved health and safety outcomes. They're saying, okay, they're segued into, let's say 3, building strong, healthy communities through investment in neighborhoods. They segued away from housing and into neighborhoods. And that's where we find that. But it does say demolition activities exacerbate the pandemic's impact on housing and security or lack of affordable housing and eligible use of funds. So the question is, there's short-term, with this project, there'll be short-term loss of affordable housing that eventually, when a much larger project is done, would, if the project was successful, need more housing. So that's something I guess we just have to look at.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer if that applies.
Does it apply to housing or a neighborhood improvement?
Right,
And those may be 2 separate things.
right.
But rehabilitation, renovation, maintenance, or costs to secure vacant or abandoned properties to reduce their negative impact are eligible. So I haven't found anything that leads me to think that the eightplex is not eligible.
Right, that would be a renovation.
So
Yeah.
it's market housing right now and would be market rate, and it would be converted to low income.
Right.
I think I think the 8-plex, I would agree, is eligible.
Now, the question's going to come with that, as well with, again, the other construction one is on page 194, beginning on page 194 of the final rule is the overview of general standards. And where it states that you need to look at the total cost of the project. So to me, that would be any of the cash, your in-kind, everything is your total, because it said to look at all. Yeah, there it is. The cities must satisfy for all uses under the public health and economic, yes. And then where was the language? I've got it highlighted here that says to look at all costs.
Are you thinking
Well, to be, they then have to do the written justification. We would just have to ask them for some additional information on that is how I
that this project, so the eightplex is not over $1 million?
know, right. No, you're right, okay.
It's the campus,
The campus,
2 million just land acquisition.
Right.
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 Then you have to look at Yeah, so for actually right on 194, in addition to the framework for projects with a total expected capital expenditures of $1 million or greater, recipients must complete and meet the substantive requirements for justification for their capital expenditure. So it's the total expected capital expenditures of $1 million, not just the ARPA dollars that you're requesting. So I think if you're looking at the bridge home, you could carve out the 8-plex. I'm still waiting. That was a specific question that I inquired about.
Yeah.
Again, we just met on Thursday, have not gotten that back, but I asked specifically in regards to this, and did this apply to housing? Because, I mean, they identify as housing and they increase housing and all things they want to do, then it says to look back at this. There's just some conflicting language in here. I want black and white and gray. And so that's the only thing that I have. And whether if we do have to look at all that, then there would be some additional questions that we have to have each of those entities
So-
complete or processing. It does talk about the description of harm needs to be addressed, and some of it is in their application. They may have to go back because of how the final rule came out. Why capital expenditure is appropriate, a comparison of the proposed capital expenditure against alternative capital expenditures, a comparison of the effectiveness of the capital expenditure in addressing harm. Yeah, so they've got a lot of additional information.
So if we were just considering the 8-plex and not the rest, not the rest of the project, because I think it could be argued just that in itself could be a project.
Right.
The rehabilitation, they've got down 166, 111. And I think we figured all this into what we kind of penciled in, that 756,000 included the rehab cost, the acquisition cost of 580, and then a portion of the closing costs. But if they do a re-estimation of what it would all cost and the rehab work would be over $1 million, then they would need to go through all of those steps. Correct?
That's how we're taking it. Anything over $1 million, they have to provide the additional information.
But
And it's
the total project, that's how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Total project.
Right.
But that's when they're talking capital, does capital fall under housing?
Right, and that's what I don't know.
I mean, because when you talk about capital, you're talking about public buildings, you're talking about the things you can spend for capital. Housing is in a different area.
Right. So they may not need to meet that, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And that is why I asked that specific question.
Right. Which we keep getting the same answer.
Well, right, but this is under from our meeting this Thursday, we haven't gotten that
Yes, that's
full
true.
response
but
back. Yeah,
I have a question for you guys. I
Okay.
that's fine.
flew into this tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's just the thing that's kind of unknown for housing is do they have to complete the additional information? And then there's additional reporting requirements, right, of information for reporting. Not that, I don't think that's, and just to be that additional reporting, that's an end all thing.
Right.
It's just finding out what else do we need and stuff.
Excuse me, I'm looking at 102 to 109, that's part of the housing. I was thinking there was some place I saw that it did refer back to the capital section. I'm not seeing it now.
102?
102 to 109 is affordable housing. Promoting long-term housing security, affordable housing, and homelessness. What are the sections were you looking at?
Well, that's what I looked at there too. So I looked at like page 60, which references capital expenditures. That are, that they identify like improvements for like labs or medical facilities. They do have adaptations for like homeless shelters. So they don't reference like new, but they just say adaptations for it on page 60 and 61. They do have them on page 63. That may be where you read it, Linda, where they do the middle of the page on page 63. It does say note that capital expenditures are not program services, and should go back to
Are not presumed to be reasonable proportional responses to identified harm except as provided in section capital expenditure and general provisions.
Right.
That's what I was thinking about.
right. The thing is it a proportional response? They also identify certain populations as you already presume they've been impacted. So like the homeless, that's where the confusion comes in. It's not clear throughout the document. It says this here, but then you need the next thing is, well, yes, you've got groups that you've got to meet certain criteria, but this group, they don't necessarily have to meet that because we're already going to assume they're disproportionately impacted. So that's why I asked the question I did, to find out, do they still have to, for housing, meet this capital? Yes, I would agree. It sounds like you do, but because they later say you don't have to meet this other criteria, do they have to? That I don't know.
Oh, I didn't realize you were going to. Enumerated eligible uses for disproportionately impacted households.
It may just be something that we need to
Oh, geez.
hold off. I mean, I know everybody wants to know. It just may be a couple of these construction ones we need to hold off just a little bit longer in hopes that I have that information soon.
Well, they are higher risk projects, so I think it's understandable that the board would be cautious.
So I even have, what is that, page 105. Clarify that permanent supportive housing or other programs and services to improve access to stable affordable housing among individuals who are homeless, and the development of affordable housing to increase supply of affordable and high quality living units are responsive to the individuals and households that were impacted by the pandemic, in addition to those that were disproportionately impacted.
Where are you reading on that?
It's right on the top of page 105.
Top of 105.
Starts as additionally as noted above. And on page 104, they kind of changed it says it's under the treasury's response for the low income geographies. Some of the change there. That's why there's just some confusion. So what do they have to report? Right. What do they have to fall under?
Are you implying, are you saying that if a group of individuals is disproportionately impacted, then the capital project guidelines do not apply?
Well, that's what I'm not sure on, and I'm asking that. I know it sounds confusing, but they do reference in here about needing to meet public health and harm. There's a population group that they're saying you automatically meet that criteria.
You don't have to prove that you're impacted by COVID,
Right.
pandemic.
Right, they're already making that assumption.
Yeah.
on that. So my question was when they talked about capital projects, because most of the capital projects, they didn't identify housing, they identified other projects for capital. So my question was then, does the same for the capital pages, the overview of general standards for those capital expenditures still follow for housing? I was unclear. It may be clear to both of you. It was unclear to me and when we had our meeting. That was why my question was.
It does go on 106. Says with all interventions to address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, affordable housing projects must be responsive and proportional to the harm identified. This test may be met by affordable housing development projects, which may involve large expenditures and capital investments. If the developments increase the supply of long-term affordable housing for low-income households.
So do they then have to meet their standard?
For the purposes of this test, Treasury will presume that any projects that would be eligible for funding under either the National Housing Trust Fund or the Home Investment Partnership Program are eligible. But do they have to report? Do that
Do they
report?
have to meet the other standards when is there other information that we need to garner?
The economic standards.
Right.
Because I thought there were two, and one was related to COVID and the other was economic.
Right,
And
right,
that
right.
would trigger
And I-
the cost benefit piece.
Right, I don't think they need to do that. I think they're already identified as that demographic. There is in the capital expenditure where you have to do the written justification, and there's where you have to, they're saying if you're gonna do that, then you need to go out and do a comparative on, other, two other, there it is. Does housing need to do that when they said things like you just read, that there may be large expenditures for housing because we know housing was impacted? That was my question is, they may say things of reference to this, but when you say things like this, that they're already identifying that, yes, there's going to be large expenditures potentially for housing, do you still have to meet, do you have to meet this? It just,
It would have
it
been.
seems like it's telling you one
if-
thing and then telling you another thing.
If what they were thinking was that you would not have to, they should have written it down. I mean, I'm not real comfortable because it's a capital expenditure. It doesn't say capital capital expenditures we're talking about all over the place doesn't apply in this case. They're not saying that. I think we need to wait for an answer. And
But I think in the meantime, what we could do, just throwing this out there, I mean, is we could put this back on the couple entities, few entities that would fall under this area so that they would, we could then email or reference looking at those particular pages and say, we're gonna need additional information. I mean, I don't want them to do additional work if they don't need to, but I also don't want to say, I want to, make this a much longer process until we find out.
Well, so if it's established that they do need to do additional reporting, or would that impact our decision to fund a project?
I think the question then becomes, is they're saying in here under capital expenditures, if it's over a certain amount where written justification comes in, then you need this additional information. They need to, right here. We need to describe the harm and describe the address, explain why capital expenditure is appropriate, compare the proposed capital expenditure against alternative recommendations. There's a thing that compares against two.
Alternatives.
Right, against two alternatives. So I think if the total project, not the bigger asking, but the total project is over that amount, they're gonna have to provide this information. And that's where you then determine if it meets the, or is it proportional to the need? Well, yes, they've already said, they know housing's been impacted. It's, to me, seems there is a need for it. That's why I was asking if they needed to do this. So could you say, hey, yes, we'd like to fund these projects? Certainly, I think you could, but you have to say something like it's contingent upon one, getting this information or having them complete this information, or two, till we hear back from ISAC or both. And that's what I'm just.
Could I read something at the end?
Mhm.
Recipients pursuing projects with expected total capital expenditures greater than $1 million should still independently determine if the expenditures are a reasonably proportional response. We, as the county, are the recipient. The people we're granting money to are either sub-recipients or beneficiaries.
What page are you looking at with that?
If the footnote on page 201, the middle of it. It's saying recipients must determine, so the applicant needs to give us the information and we need to make a determination. We need to be convinced that the expenditures are a reasonably proportional response. So we have to really,
I guess my question is, are we considering a project that's over $1 million?
are we?
Are we? That's my question. We don't know.
Well, I think the question comes in when it says we have to look at the total project cost. So if you have projects that are total, not just ARPA requests.
No, I understand that. I
I
guess
think she
I'm
said
just saying, are any of, I think we're saying the same things over and over and over again, and I agree with them. But are they relevant? Are any of these projects outside the water projects over $1 million?
Richmond.
Well, yes, but that's got land acquisition and all of that. We'll be considering that portion.
If they provide information on the total cost of the project of if just the eightplex, I mean, do we know that? I know you separated it out and estimated it at 750,000,
I think the question is, you have to look,
but
if their goal is to do this total project and an eightplex is a portion of it, can you only look at the eightplex for this, or do you need to look at as the total?
Can I rephrase what I think you're saying? Can I try to rephrase it?
Yeah.
That we don't have to necessarily go through all this and have that answer if we want to make a determination whether we are interested in funding it or not.
Right.
So we could say, so maybe that's a question we should ask ourselves right now, is are we interested in funding that entire project or just part of it? And if we're only interested in funding part of it, then we don't have to wait and pursue that answer. Right, right, okay, that's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah.
I can,
I still have lots of questions about whether the land acquisition, whether we could even do that. And so in my mind, the only piece I'm looking at is the eightplex. I have not even
I think one of the goals is getting some relief to people fairly quickly. We've got some deadlines on this that do make it less likely to get that done. The eightplex is a much simpler project and it's already set up for housing and some remodeling. But yes, it's for sale. It could be fairly quickly turned around and made into low-income housing. So I would be I would be for just considering the eightplex.
I would be open to that and consider the eightplex and when I get back from Treasury, or ISAC is contacting Treasury, go further on the rest.
So then we would just need a more solid on the eightplex. For sure. And then, like you said, we could, whatever we decide, whatever agreement we would draft, we could have the caveat in there if the total project crosses over $1 million. This is the information that we have to have. Or, no, I mean, we would need to know that before. We would need to know that before.
You would want to know something like that before, but I don't think the contingencies are done with, before the contract is written. I think some of those need to be included in there. Because there may be something that comes up that maybe it's out of their control and the prices go up and it puts the project over $1 million, then what?
Well, it's gonna
Yeah.
take some time to write the contracts, so this is kind of like, this would be a preliminary depending upon having a, negotiating successful contract. Looking, trying to find the so it's 580,000 for the acquisition. 46,000 for closing on all acquisitions, and not a lot of closing costs. Rehabilitation 166. 580 plus say 10 for closing. 166 for 8 plus. I don't know what administrative expenses.
I'm not sure what portion of that would go for the eightplex.
And then supportive services. 756 plus supportive services for the plus for a year. 96. Getting about 850-ish, and the relocation expenses for existing tenants is 15,000.
And did you include the demolition?
No,
No,
because they're not,
because
they're not demoing the
demolition
eightplex.
eightplex.
Okay.
It's a rehab or renovation.
So it's 580 for the acquisition. I put in 10 for closing costs, which is probably high. 166 for rehabilitation, skip the administrative costs. And, supportive services at 96. So I had 852 about.
That's very wrong. Relocation expenses?
I don't know. I don't know if those people would be, I mean, maybe it's a few thousand, put in 3, because the 15,000 was for all of these places. 855, 860. It's under $1 million.
Right.
We could pencil it in at 850 or something like that. And then ask them to fine tune it, but the administrative expense, I would really need to know what that.
So I think the question is, if we're at, I mean, I think we just set an amount and just say what we're willing to pay versus sending it back, because I think that opens up for anyone else to fine tune
Yeah,
Okay.
a budget.
right.
I think you're opening that door. I think you just said this is the amount we want to do.
Let's just do the 850. 855. Say that's it.
855 is the amount you're considering for that project.
Since you got about the same thing, I'm okay with. I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
it,
that was, I got about
back
that.
and after kind of stuff there.
And did that include any of the administrative
No,
No,
expenses?
no, yeah, I think it's just flat.
it was acquisition and closing costs, 10,000 for closing costs. Supportive services
And the rehab.
and the rehab. And then
maybe
3,000 for relocation fees.
Yeah. Okay.
That was back up.
The list.
The list,
The spreadsheet.
yeah, that 50 back up. Thank you.
So that you could make that not. Highlighted. Here. Something there too. Something in there.
Can the haven't that right? Or-
Yeah, that's right.
That's fast. That can't be 3 million. Okay.
And will the board want to review the list of questions that would go along with this? You want to review that again? The list of questions that goes along with number 29 that we were just talking about. The Aplex. I mean, do you want me to send that to you for review? Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think we answered the questions about the Aplex.
From the last time.
Yeah, there might be other ones about the entire project. But I think we decided to wait to see what the answer was about eligibility before we or the capital expenses before we spend it. Because what happens if we decide that it's just not feasible, why ask them to go through more work?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I think we should just wait. Does that not make sense to you, Sandra, or am I missing something?
No, I don't think so. The main question that we asked them in the past about the Aplex was, did they want the board to consider the Aplex? And not, the other part. If the board decides that they're not going to fund the whole thing, do you want them to consider the Aplex for funding? And they said yes. Then provided additional information about the rest of the project. I just want to make sure that if the board has some additional questions about the eightplex, that you're able to
Gotcha,
get those
gotcha.
answered.
I understand what you're saying now.
No, I don't. So. I'm gonna go back and look at that.
Well, that was the food.
That was the food.
That's good.
So that's
Okay, never
good.
mind, that's good.
And that was, yeah, that was just the portion.
Right, we
For
took
the
out the
food.
utility portion out, so it's just,
We let the utility portion out because we decided doing all the wastewater stuff, that was gonna help people with water bills. 'cause
Right.
It's gonna be more efficient.
Right.
Got it.
right, and we probably want to, in our notifications, make sure it's clear that it's just for the food, not the utility.
Just writing that.
Yeah, no, that's great, I appreciate that, yep. So, we'll go through.
Just scrolling down.
Yeah.
Navigator position for Michael.
No, that's a 0 over on number 53, she doesn't have it listed over there.
Does that mean we said wasn't eligible?
Yeah. I
I
think
believe
we
we did.
I think we determined that it was not, because it was more of an internal
Oh, they were, yes,
yeah,
yeah, it was kind of a, yeah, redo our internal systems. It wasn't getting people, because then you do talk a lot about navigator positions
Right.
in the final rule, but what they really talked about was getting people hooked up with services, not redoing your internal organizational. stuff. Okay. Got it.
And then the Boys and Girls Club was the project minus the kitchen. Am I remembering that
Right.
correctly?
right. So it was their internet.
And IT.
Internet IT, yeah,
Learning.
Yeah.
right.
Learning issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So raise the not eligible.
Right, I think we deemed these are not eligible, I mean, they are
Good project.
good projects. They didn't meet the criteria as listed in the ARPA rules.
Do you remember specifically why we said 28 was not eligible?
Oh, I think it's because they're put it here in their written application, recovery housing was 500 to 2 million for renovation of the current aid shelter and recovery. Was it more vague?
That's the only thing they have in the budget.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They just
1
put
million.
shelter renovation 1 million, recovery house 1 million. They, but in their written application, it was pretty broad up, 500 to 2 million, so it wasn't as specific.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of capital costs again.
Yeah, I think we just felt it wasn't as detailed or well thought out for that one.
Thank you. I agree. Right, so.
Yeah, I do think in some of the other projects that were kind of requested in other building projects too, is that the rules really kind of focus on ways to mitigate versus like building new buildings. That, can you do, in the place where the airflow is an issue, do you need like a new air filtration? That just to, and actually, I actually kind of found it weird kind of comment, just if you want like a larger building to more socially distance, which I would think that this is what you want to do, it seemed like that was not.
That
was
alone
not-
was not
that was-
enough.
That was not enough. There had to be other measures to do. And then you also had to meet the specific of public health and negative economic impact. And the public health was pretty clearly defined as to what that meant, separate from like housing, because housing seemed to have its own criteria where those projects just did not meet what was outlined in here, if I'm stating that correctly.
No, excuse me, I didn't interrupt. Do we need to look at the internals again since we've gone through the final rule? It's
Yep.
like 420.
Yep,
so I
let's
was
do that.
gonna-
Sure.
But we should move along. I have a question, I just don't know how to resolve it. A, Creek Grove wastewater system. Everything I read in terms of the wastewater talks about infrastructure and construction. What our cost is going to be there has gone down a little bit. It's either 533 or 535,000. But the way that the utilities, they want to structure it, is that they're going to get a loan and do the work, and then they're going to charge us back for the construction as a connection fee, a one-time connection fee. I don't know how that fits into everything I've read here in water and wastewater. I don't know if it does or sewer. I just don't know if it does or doesn't.
They are getting a loan.
The Iowa Utilities, the company, is getting a loan to construct the connection between Hickory Grove Park and where Polo comes right now, which is 20 acres. Then they're going to charge us back a connection fee that covers the cost of their construction. Maybe doing something else with it to cover the cost of the construction to put costs up. We're not doing the construction, they are. They're charging it, they're calling it a connection fee. I've gone back and forth on this, and I don't know how it applies. I know Ethan. So we're trying, is looking at the contract right now, and I have not had time to talk to him about it. And I also know he's not been looking at the ARPA, so I read it, and I just can't figure it out. How it would be looked at.
Yeah, that's a good question. My hang up is that language exactly. Investments in water, sewer, and broadband must be, quote, necessary. Page 261.
Necessary for what?
So Treasury considers a necessary investment in infrastructure to be one that is, one, responsive to an identified need to achieve or maintain an adequate level of service, which may include a reasonable projection of increased need, whether due to population growth or otherwise.
Have an increase in need just based on utilization. So,
I guess my question is this necessary? Is this,
We're polluting right now.
right,
thank you, that's all I need to know.
We're polluting right now. The DNR has concerns about Hickory Grove's lagoon. Major concerns.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Does that do it? That does it. That does it right there.
Treasury's overview, it said that it encourages recipients to review the EPA handbook for the clean water CWSRF, or list of eligibilities.
I'll look some of those things up, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's a whole nother,
It's,
another
it
thing.
makes the final rule look like a walk in the park.
I guess what I did not realize was that there were existing issues
There are
with the
existing
system
issues.
that is there right now. It's not
Yes.
just, we want more campsites. We
No.
want to expand.
No.
So we
No.
want to do this.
I'm
That
sorry.
was where I was
Oh.
hung up.
No, but there are very much concerns there about the water law, like everything, that lagoon's operation.
Okay. Okay, wow. I wish we would have had this conversation like
I'm
a few months
sorry.
ago.
It's what we don't know, somebody doesn't know.
Exactly.
Okay, excuse me.
well, sometimes I think that we say it, but we say it in such a roundabout way, it's
Yeah.
not clear.
Yeah. I can't tell you how much time I've spent going, I wish I was more comfortable with this
And I wasn't
one.
understanding, I wasn't understanding, okay,
Wow.
we cut through that. We can change that to $535,000.
But you're still waiting for more clarification from Ethan on that?
Ethan's got contracts, he's been with the Iowa Utilities, wherever they are, for months. They just got it back to Ethan, and they'll need to go back to Colo. I think once Ethan's done with it, Colo will expedite. We'll get it done. The Edgefield nutrient removal practices. I think this fits, page 270. Treasury interprets the word infrastructure in this content broadly to mean the underlying framework or system for achieving the given public purpose, whether it be provision of drinking water or management of wastewater or stormwater. As discussed below, this includes not just storm drains and culverts. Culverts, I read drainage tiles, for the management of stormwater, for example, but also fire retention basins, rain barrels, et cetera, things that together reduce the amount of runoff that needs to be managed by traditional infrastructure, i.e. drainage tiles.
What page were you on?
270 and 271. I think that's,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree.
now, a caveat there. They're also looking at another source of funds for that, so if they get that, we can drop it here, but if they don't get it, I leave it here. I leave it here
When
for
do
now.
you think they'll know?
Soon, it was the one that Mike and Sarah came and talked about at our
Oh, yeah.
board meeting
Yeah.
and said that it was one of these grant things that have been put out, I think by DNR, and it was supposed to be, it was like, there wasn't a deadline, just get stuff in, click, and we'll decide quick. We're doing a lot
Kind of a
of
revolving grant.
Rolling.
Yeah, rolling grants.
Rolling
Yeah,
grant,
it's
yeah.
one of those. And I always have deadlines, but whatever. So McFarland Lake, I thought Mike was going to take that
I did too. Yeah.
and I just haven't gotten the email yet. I left him a message earlier and the beep on my phone a while ago, I'm available now, you can call me, but let's just
A question mark on that for right now.
put a question mark on it. I think it's a no. So I took all those just as. Yeah. We get down to bank stabilization. I have a reference for
Okay.
that as well.
Any concerns about the HVAC replacements or
Crunch counter barriers?
counter barriers? Nope. No, me either. And COVID testing equipment for the jail that qualifies, and as well as the possible testing for employees,
Question
which we
mark
can
on
just
that.
put a question mark. Any concerns about reporter back scanning?
No.
We're back to you.
Stream bank stabilization, page 281, near the bottom, they're talking about clean water state revolving fund, eligible green infrastructure categories such as greenhouse, blah, 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 riparian or shoreline creation, protection, or restoration. This is riparian restoration. So it qualifies.
Okay, great. And then digitization of work supervisors minutes. Fine. Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. I don't really. So. So for next steps, we can get everything except for the Cortland Park and the vaccine and testing procedures on the next agenda for internal.
I think so.
Alyssa, are you on the phone? Or on Zoom? Sorry, I forgot which meeting we're at.
I don't know, because we didn't turn it
Yeah,
on.
no, I agree.
Yeah.
We'll get to our speakers.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. What was the question again?
So I was just, we were talking about holding on putting the testing on the board agenda to hold off on that. Was there any reason to move that forward at this particular time?
I don't think you need to move it forward at this particular time. It doesn't look like, since they put us, they said that OSHA couldn't enforce it. I think we could leave it there and then, but I don't think we need to move it forward at this time.
That's what I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, that's my recommendation. I don't want it all to go away in case something comes up in the next month or two, you know, if there's some new rules that come out, which I haven't heard of any, but yeah, that's my recommendation. So you're right, Lisa.
I think going back to look at them from lake renovation, I'm pretty sure that's going to be out because what I found out from the DNR was of the total project, this is for design. The total construction, only a small portion of that was actually going to be eligible for ARPA funds. So when you get to the design, it's a small portion of a smaller amount, so it turns out to be not much, very much money. So, and I'll get confirmation with him, but I'm pretty sure he decided to pull that.
And then for external projects, I mean, yeah, do we want, are we ready to put them on a board agenda? I guess is what I'm asking. Oh. Gotcha. To approve. Just for an initial approval or
Preliminary approval.
preliminary, thank you.
I called that because I think we don't know what their plan is going to be for getting contracts, but
Right.
some things. We've been making notes about things that have to be in contracts, and we'll have to make sure that that's acceptable to everybody before we can finally
Right.
So how much was the internal? Yeah. Oh. So the Q and A document.
Yeah, zero out.
Yeah.
That's 3,269.
Two, can you read it? 2689145.
Total then, and so far, we haven't, oh, then we've got that.
2689145. Oh, there you go. Right there. All right.
So the total is 11.
Seven, one, three, three, six. That's
Oh,
all right.
it's got workforce too.
So this is the total minus the workforce and broadband. 11,755,53,266.
That includes what we added today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the caveat that you go back and check all the numbers.
And then it's the 12 million, once you add in the workforce and broadband.
So got 12,400.
And what about the position? Where is that?
That we still have
Is
that
it-
as a zero for administrative.
It's still, okay,
So we need, yeah, we'll have to add that.
500,000 is set aside for that or something.
Which,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
we
do
did too.
remember that. 500,000 was set aside for
administration.
administration.
So that's gonna be. We have more word on, we'll get the second 9 million.
Get it a year after our first.
We'll get it like June or July. I know we haven't even really done anything about currently how.
I heard it once, it was gonna be January or June, and I thought that was,
Yeah, it's for June.
okay, well, there's 12 million here, and we only have 9 million on hand.
Take your time, we gotta get the contracts. Not like you can get the money out right away, and we also be billing for those dollars.
And some of it's also gonna be whether the contracts advance money are gonna be on a reimbursement
Right.
basis.
So,
So,
so then are we in agreement that we put the external ones on the agenda for next week? Or, okay,
every
for
discussion,
discussion and consideration?
And are you doing the internal?
And,
ones as well?
yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were doing both. Or not. Want to move to public comment?
We do have 2 people with their hands raised, and then there's some in the chat.
Okay.
We want you to,
Well, are the folks with the hands up, are they the ones in the chat too?
yes and no.
Okay.
Do Julie first.
Sure. Hi, Jody. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here. Sorry. Again, trying to figure out how this operates still after a year and a half. First of all, thank you again for all the work you guys are doing on this. We're just so appreciative of everything you're considering and the direction you're going with our request. I would just ask, on the land acquisition, if you can take a look at the final rule, specifically, the eligible use category number 2, which is emergency housing assistance. If you look at that at the bottom of page 83, it does state that this eligible use category also includes emergency assistance for individuals experiencing homelessness, either individual level assistance for groups of individuals. And further, the Treasury is clarifying that transitional shelters, temporary residence for people experiencing homelessness, are eligible capital expenditures. So if you could just look at that a little closer, it's seeming to me and to the folks we've been working with that acquisition of land is an eligible capital expenditure. I understand it may mean extra work on our end with additional reporting requirements and such. And we are more than happy to do that and accommodate any type of information that you need for us. But I just wanted to ask if you could maybe take a closer look at that section.
I appreciate the page number. Thank you.
And that's probably what I was looking for, quite frankly, because I was looking for the part of housing that referred to the capital expenditures section.
Right,
And this does it.
it does, yeah, it does, and I see, yeah, I even had it highlighted, just goes to show when you reread things so many
I had it
times. Yeah,
highlighted
you get
too,
weary.
so I just put an asterisk by it.
Yeah.
Because, yes, I couldn't find it again.
Right,
So
so then it
thank you,
does say
Jody.
if you're doing that, you refer to the capital expenditure section.
Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, you're welcome. And again, please let me know if you need anything else from us. We're happy to provide it.
Thank you. Did you have any other questions or anything while we've got you pinned?
I don't think so. I think that's it. You know, that's the important piece for us right there. You know, to be able to help all the folks that need rehoused get housed, we have to first get them off the street, you know, with that transitional living situation. So just thank you for looking at that particular section and for reconsidering.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jody. Sherry?
Hi, thank you. A couple of things I had. Latifa, I think you said that you had some questions for us that we hadn't answered. And I'm wondering if, or what those were and why, because we've answered several things and Sandra has responses from us.
I think the only thing I can think of that you might be talking about was when we were going through the cost of the 8-plex and exactly how much for sure that might be, and making sure that the cost of the 8-plex project itself didn't go over $1 million.
Right.
I think that's what I was talking about, because I think that was.
We just
Okay.
went-
Would it be helpful if we went ahead and costed that out separately and sent that to you before the next meeting?
We just went through your budget detail and pulled out the things that seemed to be related to the 8-plex and came
Right.
up with a figure. And
But-
I think we just decided to set an amount of what we're
Yeah.
going to fund the
Yeah.
project. That's what we did.
Okay,
we-
then I saw that, but I noticed that you didn't include any administrative costs, and we could probably give you some justification for including some of that.
Yeah, my concern was that if it was a project that was going over $1 million, that
Right,
that we captured
Yeah.
all of.
okay. And then another question is the proportionality of the expense for the land. When you compare what we've been spending for motels and the dilapidated condition of our current structures, I do believe that the new structure, what we would build on those lots would be a proportional response, because there's no way we can just update our HVAC system and things like that and make our current structure better, or better enough. And we've been using a lot of motels. We made note of that in our proposal. The other thing that I wanted to point out on the written justification piece, yeah, we'd be happy to contribute to that process. We are aware of the requirements for single audit and all of that. We're going to meet that threshold this year anyway, regardless of the status of this particular grant. So we are aware and ahead of the game on all of those issues.
Thank you. We appreciate your understanding on that piece.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm just really nervous, or I'd be more articulate. I also wanted to point out that on page 105, 106, eligible uses include anybody that's eligible for home or National Housing Trust Fund monies. And in our proposal, we pointed out that we are indeed eligible for those things with this proposal, this project. And also the land that we're wanting to purchase for this shelter itself, the buildings, there are a total of 9 lots, including the 8-plex. 3 of those lots don't have structures on them right now. And the other 5 structures, aside from the 8-plex, are in fairly poor condition and would probably be considered blighted if anybody spent some time in them. And I think those are the main points that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Loris. Loris.
Hi, okay, well, thanks again. Yeah, okay. So first of all, I'm excited to hear about Hickory Grove. So thank you, Linda, for that. You know, it's nice to talk about something else than the housing before we get to the housing, but excited to hear about the Hickory Grove. So my questions, as you can kind of scrolling down or whatever, first of all, is about that $1 million threshold. And my real question is, when we did the initial estimates that we turned in requesting the grant from you guys, our acquisition costs were at $775,000 to $800,000. So we're under that particular 1 million. I know we're going to be over now. I mean, I anticipated, unless we get some really good buys on lumber and stuff. Okay. So what does that mean? Does that mean we now have to do this written justification? And you may not have an answer today, huh?
That's what we're thinking, and that's why I specifically at my ISAC meeting asked about that for clarification on that, Laura.
Okay, super.
It looks like yes, we do, but as I said, the final rules I wish were black and white, they're gray. And so some areas seem to, one area seems very clear of yes, we need to do it, and then you read elsewhere, it doesn't seem as clear on that. That's why I was seeking just clarification through ISAC.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Then, of course, I understand once again why my request was a no. Bummed me out, but I understand it. Okay. So looking at if there would be an option of a second request for proposals and rounds, how that would seem at this point to impact the Home Allies project would be only if we could get some interim financing, say for a couple $100,000, in addition to the 50% loan to value loan, okay, which would be a long-term thing. But would that $200,000 qualify for repayment, since it would be a very short-term loan in applying for a second round of funding? And I suppose that one, that one maybe is to Lisa Markley, or you, but because that's kind of the holdup given our time frame. Is that, well, geez, if we went ahead and had someone give a personal loan for a couple $100,000 in hopes that we would be approved for a second round of funding for $200,000. What exactly would that mean? Since you've discussed before, you can't repay debt.
And we also can't comment on an application we don't have.
I'm asking in general terms, okay? In general terms, what
No
seems-
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, and in general terms, we had another application, two other applications where they were requesting funding to pay off the debt from a project.
right?
And that was
I remember that. So I
Yeah.
got the impression from both of those that was permanent debt that you were
Right.
paying off. And that's why I'm asking the difference between, because clearly, okay, at least in our situation, we're going to have actually an interim loan. All right. We're not asking you for any money to pay off that interim loan, but it's a construction loan that'll roll to a permanent long-term loan. So that's what I'm talking about, is if we covered some of the difference in what we need cash, right, at the bank, to go ahead and close on that interim or construction into permanent. I'm just asking if an interim loan would not be paid off, because there have to be other entities out there who are doing construction or having to get interim financing.
Talking about bridge loan.
Yeah, a bridge loan. Yeah, that's another term for it. So you don't have to answer it today, but it would certainly be a question that if you're looking at a second round of funding.
Sure, yeah.
So and then I'll finish with saying that it never did occur to me that you guys would fund 100% of requests. And so that was my fault. So I'm sorry, that is why we're asking for more money now. You have surprised me with your generosity. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I'm just letting you know kind of how I've been so impressed with how you guys have really gone through all of this, and not just said we'll only do so much percent of any request or whatever. How much thinking you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
It's been an exhaustive process, I will say.
Yes, it has. Are there any other folks in the chat that we missed? Okay. I don't think at this point we need to set another meeting. Or are we,
The position, is that going to be considered at
Yes.
another meeting?
yeah,
And then there's, after you decide that you're going to make a preliminary approval of some of the projects, then there's a time where some work probably needs to start. What's going to happen during that interim period between, the time those projects are, in the preliminary approval stage, and when, if the position is approved, somebody actually gets here to do the work.
Good question.
You be done with asset work?
You're never done with that. So
I'm glad you laughed at that. That was to be. But so maybe it'd be helpful if we set a meeting and you come back and bring the position and give us your thinking and make some direction there. And then maybe some of the things that you're thinking about that would have to happen in the meantime, you'd maybe, I'm better with concrete examples sometimes.
What, didn't we ask, Alyssa, I don't remember, didn't we already ask you to bring something for us to consider?
a formal job description.
Yeah, formal job description?
There's one on the restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought it was actually gonna be like at a board meeting. I could be wrong.
And she has the draft, but
I don't know if it's final yet. Yeah, I thought that was gonna, and maybe whether it was that or at this meeting for us to.
I thought it was
Yeah,
at this meeting,
review.
but I
It might be at this meeting, that was gonna have us look at, so that could go on a board meeting, but I was thinking it was gonna be.
Is Alyssa still on the phone or on the Zoom, excuse me, on whatever device we're using? today?
Alyssa, are you still there?
Yes, sorry.
Did you have the job description all ready to bring forward to either one of our ARPA meetings or a board meeting?
No, I'm hoping to get that done and on the agenda for next Tuesday. Is that soon enough? Do you want it on an agenda or do you want to talk about it at an ARPA meeting?
Okay, talk about that at a board meeting.
We need to talk about that at a board meeting. I just didn't know if you wanted to review and make any revisions to the job description, or do you want me just to bring it forward to the board to approve the position and then?
So contract, maybe we should just come to you individually if we've got questions about it, because I do.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Do you want her to wait on putting that on a board agenda, or to go ahead and get it on the agenda for next week? And
I think we need to get moving on it. Let's just get it on the agenda. and
Okay.
We can discuss, and if we have changes.
You can make
let me know.
changes next Tuesday to it if you still need to and finalize that. We just need to get something out there for you to discuss. If that makes sense.
how much longer it will take, just the hiring process itself.
You're probably talking about 2 months, a month and a half.
I'm sorry. go ahead.
I mean, you can advertise for less, it's like, but even if with a 2 or 3 week advertisement, it takes it takes a little bit of time, probably a month and a half if you push it. So beginning of March is where I would say you'd probably have somebody.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I can have a timeline too with the job description if you want on the agenda, so you guys can discuss that.
Did you want? Greg, clap in the chat. I've gotten the question from a couple communities on what the preliminary timeline looks like for final allocations.
Well, we want contracts done.
Right.
It's probably gonna be a couple months,
Right.
because we have to get somebody hired, we gotta get contracts put together.
Yeah.
I'd say at least 2 months. And I don't know when we want to do wastewater, they're wanting to get moving, I don't know what timelines are gonna be, we can't.
Right. But I think knowing what we're going, once they have the information about whether we're willing to enter into a contract with them, I think that will be at least help.
I do too.
Well, and I assume the question may be coming because those communities are working on their budgets as well. So if they, I would think if they know at least,
They can pencil it in.
they can pencil in that this is the money that they're going to be receiving.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the best we can give you right now, Greg.
No, and that's perfectly fine. And that's what I was actually wanting because of that exact same question I'm getting is they're trying to budget now for all the letting later in July in the new fiscal year. So as long as they have a timeline, then they can plan around, that's good enough for them.
As long as you understand what we're doing right now is a work session to get these on the board agenda. This isn't really our approval. This is a direction. Next Tuesday will be when we
Make
make a
decisions.
decision.
Yep, and completely understand. And you three have far more patience with US Treasury regulations than I do at the moment. So
Okay, trying to be respectful of staff time right now too. Did we want to set another ARPA session?
Let's set one for 2 weeks from now.
I will be gone. So I mean, if you want to do it next week,
Next
or
week,
do it the week after.
next week's kind of. I thought it would just be good to talk about, okay, what things have we missed? What are we looking at in terms of, like Sandra's saying, what are we gonna do for the next 2 months? Just some brainstorming with staff about. So I have Thursday afternoon,
There's on the 10th.
no, 27th.
Oh, I could do that. Yeah, no, I have CICS from 1 to 3. I could do it after that. I have the,
27th of January? Is that what we're talking about?
yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay,
But
sorry.
Lisa's saying no.
well, yeah, let's do it at 3, not to 3. I have CICS.
We have formal pre-election.
Yeah, we do.
So what does Wednesday, the 26th look like?
I have a meeting and I have meetings and names all day. I could possibly. State of the community is in the middle of the day and I took advantage of that to have meetings and aims.
How about Tuesday, the 25th?
I'd have to be out of here by 2:30. Need to make sure my car battery doesn't explode.
Yeah, that's important.
What was your Friday morning like?
My Friday morning is open until 10.
That doesn't work for you, Linda?
I have a personal appointment. I
Okay.
can change.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
How about Wednesday morning?
The 26th?
Oh, but you're in Ames all day.
Monday?
The 24th, Monday. I only have the budget work session.
I've got Headwaters WMA in the morning. And Roland, I could do it after the budget session, but that gets late.
Well, I think we can stick to a 1-hour meeting.
If it's
We
just
have
on that
to.
topic, if it's just on that topic, we could.
I've got countywide. For 2 hours, so maybe that's.
Oh,
probably-
I only have it from 2 to 3.
I'll do that.
Is that what you have, Lisa?
I just put whatever on my thing and. different month. On the 24th. Actually, I have it in the morning, so
No. We changed.
it's, yeah, no, I just didn't.
Let's put ARPA 3 to 4. Yeah.
Does that work?
Does that work for you guys?
I have to double check, but I probably had the budget meeting for 2 hours also, so. I'm not sure.
I somehow had it 2 hours in the morning, so that's.
And we changed that because I.
Right. I just didn't make the change, so.
It's just gonna be a brainstorming session. Maybe it's just getting a list of things and.
And we may not even need it. We may
Okay.
not.
So on the 24th, I've got ARPA down at 3 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Or no? Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.